Hey, what's going on in these 16 things? My name is Jared. I'm the host of Steel and Juna podcast. Recently, I did an episode with Luke and Brian. I hope you enjoy this one. If you want to find out more about Steel and June, go to my website, steelandjune.com. Or if you want to check out the rest of the podcast episodes, go to Spotify or wherever you get podcasts. Check it out.
La luz de la cine.
Stealing June.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Steel and June, a podcast. I'm your host, Jared, and today I'm being joined by Luke and Brian, the founder and board member of These 16 Things. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me today on Steel and June, a podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, no problem. So, I guess I should have flipped a coin before we hit record here. Whichever one of you want to go ahead and, tell us a little bit about yourself. Brian?
Yeah, I'll start. So, my name is Brian Perry. This really doesn't have to do with the website, but Luke and I both are in Central Indiana, and I have my own painting business here. I have 7 kids. And as far as the website, the website is these16things.com. And I got the idea just by listening to something else that talked about things that teach kids that schools won't. Wanted to do something around that idea. It put together the website, knowing that I would eventually bring Luke on to do it. Just didn't get him involved in the very beginning stages. And really, as soon as the website launched, literally that day, I think I texted Luke and said, "What do you think?" And really just got him going because I know that he brings a lot of benefit. Luke, as you'll probably see in the interview, is more of the teacher of the two of us. So he's better spoken, better at writing, things like that. I'm kind of the big picture guy in my mind, I think. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. Go ahead, Luke.
Yeah. So I was born in Long Beach, California. My dad was military, and so all 18 years, 17 years living under my dad, moving around, military life. And I ended up joining the Army myself out of Oakland, California. So I spent 20 years in the Army doing, Army stuff. That's for a whole nother conversation, I suppose. Retired, settled in the south side of Indianapolis, met Brian at our church. Wife and I, we have 8 kids now. We have 7 daughters, and we had our son about a year and a half ago. And Brian and I, because of the kids, him having 7, and me having 8, which is more than 7, in case Brian didn't know, it's more. 8 is more than 7. It's a bigger number. We have a lot of skin in the game.
Right.
I'm also a high school teacher. I teach 11th and 12th graders, and I see a lot of kids just lost, just absolutely lost. So both of us having the teenagers, and we have a real heart and a real passion, not just for our kids, as every parent really should. But we want to help a lot of parents that are frustrated in modern day. They're not sure where to turn. They're not sure where to go. They're not sure the best move. Some parents feel like they've lost control. They've lost too much ground in this war against culture or electronics or whatever the thing is. And so this outreach, we're pretty passionate about trying to help parents.
Good. That's a really important thing, especially I felt like as I gotten older in today's culture, trying to help kids or parents or both, and kind of navigate, life in a way, because it can be overwhelming, especially if you come from a broken home.
Right. And if we're not teaching the kids, if we aren't setting the kids down to have these difficult discussions, someone else is. And really, someone else is no matter if we are or not. But it's important for us as parents to sit down with the kids and again, have those conversations to almost correct what they're learning maybe on TV or at school. Because, man, even though Luke and I both, I was about to say Luke and I both homeschool our kids, really it's our wives homeschool the kids.
Yep.
But if, so our kids aren't going to school and getting that information, getting some of the bad things from school, but we hear about it all the time because we have friends that send their kids to school. We go to church with several people. Obviously, the majority of the people send their kids to school, and we just hear so much about what's going on in the schools. And again, if you're not having the conversations with your kids, their friends, their teachers, the TV are having those conversations with the kids.
2 days ago, Brian and I were talking to the youth pastor and his wife from our church. And we had talked to them and another pastor at church that they all have younger kids, talking about 5 years and younger. So why aren't y'all homeschooling? Why? Why would you continue to read what's happening across American schools? And why would you continue to want to put them in public school? And the argument we hear is, well, it's not going to come to small town Indiana. All of these culture wars are not really going to come here. Well, 2 days ago, the youth pastor was saying that one of his youth, middle schoolers, was given detention for misgendering somebody in his class. We don't have any more information than that. It could have been the kid was just being a jerk, or it could have been he simply misgendered and the teacher wanted to prove a point to the class. But that is in small town Indiana. You can't hide from it. You can't. Yeah, it's everywhere. Jared, you also mentioned coming from broken homes, broken families. You sound like you have something on your mind when you're saying that. What are you thinking about with some of the struggles?
Yeah, so I grew up, I wouldn't say really, my parents divorced when I was 14, 14, 15, and they still kept a decent relationship, and I grew up pretty much with my father, my brother and sister living with my mom, or whatever, and I just, not for me personally, but, I had a best friend at one point in my life whose father walked out on him, and just to see the mental havoc that, it wreaked on him, even still to this day. And I know other people, earlier in life, people I grew up with, go through that brokenness one or two times, and maybe their mom or dad remarried and then divorced again, type of situation, to where, it screwed them up, later in life. So I've seen, I guess what I meant by that is, by the broken homes is I've seen a lot. I've been through a little bit myself with not having mom around, all the time, or, dad and I sometimes getting off on the wrong foot personally. But, I've had other people around me, kind of be influences from what I understand you guys do a little bit, to, kind of help you that extra buffer in setting me down the path in life, especially some teachers in school did a really good job.
My folks split when I was about 10, about fifth grade, and it was my mom that had left. And so my brother and I were underneath my dad, and he was a military dad. And so I grew up without a mother figure in the house. But no matter which way you go, men and women are not just interchangeable people like culture's trying to push. They're both needed. And so every kid in America that's missing a mom or dad is missing that kind of teaching, missing that kind of nurturing and discipline. And the person that's left, so in my case, it's my dad, the person that's left is trying to fill both shoes. And it's almost suffocating the amount of pressure and stress and anxiety on that parent. Because you and I are talking about it from the kid's perspective. Or from imagine the parents' perspective, being the one left with the kids. I don't mean to say that negatively, but
Right.
you are the one that you were left, or whatever the reason was, and you're trying to fill both sets of shoes. And so, maybe there's some of the stuff that we offer can help relieve some of that stress. Try to get some of that burden off your shoulders and say, look, we got your back. Let's do some of the stuff together. You don't have to do it by yourself. Jesus was quite clear. We're not built to carry this kind of stress, this kind of anxiety. So we're, in fact, we're Thursday, yesterday's lesson. That was the leading scripture about casting our burdens and our stress and anxiety. So we're here to help, here to provide help.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, I completely understand. I'm glad that I had the influences in my life to kind of help me. It was a little rough, for me. I mean, my grandfather, who I looked up to, passed away when I was 11, somewhere in there, 10, 11 years old. He was a pastor, and, I lost him when I was, young in life. But, through the same time, I learned in my life that brokenness can sometimes be a blessing, or broken homes, because through one situation, I've found an extended family that I personally grew up with. And it was like this family would have never happened had, this one divorce never happened. And so, that's where all things work, together for good and everything.
Absolutely. Everything has a way to work. We just got to identify it. And most people don't want to hear, why do good people die? Are you saying that's all good? Are you saying that God said it's good? That's not what we're saying. We're saying that we live in a fallen world, and death and sickness, all this stuff is going to hit us. But in your example, losing your grandpa, it's so easy to be an 11-year-old and someone incredibly significant to your life dies. And while you're trying to make heads or tails of that, you got to walk down that street with either your head held up high or your head looking down saying, why does God do all these things? It's tough, man. It's tough. Yeah. Wouldn't it be great if we could just all lift our heads up? Most of the times we look at the horizon and down. Rarely do we look above the horizon. When our heads are up high, though, it'll change our mind.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, before we dive in a little bit deeper, I wanted to ask both of you, whichever one wants to start first, how did you come to faith? Was it something that you grew up with, or is it something you guys came in later in life?
To be honest, I've been a Christian pretty much, I guess, my entire life. My parents took me to church, and I remember as a little kid sitting in a Baptist church down in Columbus, Indiana. And then we moved when I was in middle school. I remember going around to several churches, figuring out which one my parents wanted to stay, where they wanted to go long term, and did that. Stuck with the church, I think, pretty much all through high school, and ended up going to a Christian college. It's Huntington University in Northern Indiana. Went to that and got married soon afterwards, and just kept going to church. So mine has been a pretty steady, just raised in the church, still going to church.
Do you have any hiccups along the way?
I wouldn't say. I mean, there's been times, I think, as we all do, times I feel it differently. If you can understand what that means, I guess. Some times when I felt like maybe I was just going to church and not thinking about anything to do with it. But in general, not really. There were no times other than maybe, skip a week or two here and there. I just don't feel like going. Maybe when the kids were real little, when our oldest were real little. But otherwise, no major speed bumps. So maybe some hiccups, but no major speed bumps.
Yeah. So for myself, I was baptized ninth grade. ninth or 10th grade. Might have been 10th grade. My recollection is ninth, but it was in Waikiki, the beaches out there in Honolulu. So I was pretty big into shoplifting. Brian's heard the story at. Maybe you haven't heard this part. So one of the times at Pearl Harbor, a lot of people hear about December 7th, 1941, the attack on Pearl Harbor. Well, out at Pearl Harbor, they have a Navy exchange, like a big old Walmart, but for the Navy. And I was about to steal some stuff, and I kind of felt convicted. It's like, I put it back, and on the way out, my friend, I was with him and his dad. His dad was in the Army. Well, the security folks caught me, and they brought me in the back room, and they couldn't find anything on me because I put it back, but it was incredibly embarrassing. It's stuff like that. A service member can get kicked off of on-base housing, a lot of consequences. So yeah, I went back to his house, and there's Antoine with his dad. Antoine's my buddy with his dad, and I walking in, and there's Mom. And Mom's got the Bible open. She's waiting. She stared at me, says, "Sit down, son." I sit down, and she gave me the business. She gave me the business pretty good. So I kind of got saved through getting caught shoplifting my friend's mom. So I started going to his church for a while. But yeah. So 9th, 10th grade, and I had some backsliding when I was a young soldier in the Army because nobody was pulling me to church anymore. It was on me. It was on me to get up on a Sunday and go to church. It was on me to join a group. It was on me to read the Bible. It was on me to do all those things. So for anybody listening, I'll tell you what, when your kids leave the house, they either are or they are not prepared to do these things on their own. There's not really a middle ground. And I was not. My dad had a good upbringing for me, but I wasn't ready. I slid back pretty tough. What about you, Jared?
Well, yeah, more like Brian. I pretty much been a Christian my entire life. Trying to remember, I think it was 1991, 92, somewhere in there. I believe it was 91. My great-grandpa, my grandma's dad, was in the hospital, and my mom would take us to go visit him or whatever. And when he ultimately passed away, my mom explained to me what had happened and that, he had gone to heaven. And pretty much out of our conversation through that is, 3-4-year-old me accepted the Lord then. And then pretty much grew up with it. And like I said, my grandfather was a pastor. We would grow up in the church, and my mom and dad would both serve in various roles and, everything like that. And then, like I said, when I was 11, my, grandpa passed away. I was homeschooled, interestingly enough, up to just about 10 years old, 11 years old. Personally got, held back a couple years in school. Just like my unwillingness to want to learn and, just not being disciplined in my studies, stuff like that. My parents then, sent me, my brother and sister to Christian school. And it was rough, and went through my teenage years, went to public school, rest of my middle school years, high school years, and then, I never really, I'll put it this way, I've never always done the right things. I never lived personally how I should have lived and stuff like that, but I've never lost the faith. I never really turned away or walked away like that. It's more, living as more of a lukewarm Christian, especially in my early adult years, early 20s, just stuff like that. And, I finally got to a point where I was like, I want to do more with my life. I just don't want to waste all this time, and that's pretty much what I'm doing here with you guys now. That's
wasting time.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess you could say that. But bottom line is, I wanted to figure out how people got to their journey, and I've always been interested in radio, talk show type of thing. So after, playing around and doing various online streaming and stuff, I, was like, well, why don't I just make my own podcast and talk about it like that? So that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, one of the things that's really solidified over the years, well, first off, the military has definitely brought up a straightforward, practical, pragmatic person in me. No doubt about that. But Jared, I don't know how many times you've had the creation and evolution conversation, like a real in-depth conversation with someone that's willing to engage. And probably mid-20s, late 20s, when something clicked about this stuff, I'm like, this creation stuff is everywhere. You can't look at an animal without making an argument for creation. You can't. You can't look at the sky, what's in the air, the grass. It burns up and it dies and it comes back. That's just, you could go on and on. And you talk about pregnancy in 9 months and everything must go flawlessly. I could go on and on. Why do we have two types of genitalia? And without them working together to make more people, you have no people. How do they form separately? And how do we survive without them form separately perfectly? You could go on and on. And once my mind really hit on this, I was like, I'm locked in tight. You cannot look at this stuff and accept that we have a creator and not follow the creator. And the inverse, I think, is also true. And another reason Brian and I are worried about kids today is once you walk down the evolution path. So imagine you and I, Jared, we're young 20s and we're college roommates, and you walk down the creation path and I walk down the evolution path. We'll just say intelligent design. We'll say intelligent design for some folks listening. I mean, my path, the evolution path, I don't need a creator. I don't need God. It will create an entire atheistic worldview. It'll set the soul away from Jesus. And going down the creation path will bring your soul towards Jesus. That's just a simple worldview on creation evolution. So if we don't understand truth in the household, when our kids leave the house, they're in for some turbulence. They're in. I mean, the winds are going to blow against their flag and see what's going to happen, and they're going to falter. So, yeah, man, we're pretty hot about this outreach.
Yeah, yeah, sounds great. Yeah, I was just going to say that real quickly, too. I don't know if I really had the whole evolution conversation in depth with somebody. And I think the most closest thing I would ever have are they're either full on, it's one of three things. They're atheists, they're agnostic, or they're deists, in some way is what I run into. I've ran into a couple of Wiccans here and there, but those are the conversations that I really have to, deal with. But I do agree to your point, Luke, that when you look at creation, when I've always had cats, my whole life growing up and everything, and seeing watching some big cat, a lion, a puma, something like that on TV or, when you go to the zoo or whatever, and to realize how similar they are to our regular house cats. It blows me in mind, and it's truly amazing to just look at, and even animals like kangaroos, there's nothing quite like a kangaroo. I don't know why.
There's nothing close. There's absolutely nothing close. Just think about, I hadn't even considered a kangaroo. Think about how it holds its little baby.
Yeah.
That it is crazy. Where does that come from? It either carries in that front pouch or it doesn't have a front pouch. There's no alternative. It does or it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And can you imagine a kangaroo's belly? Just flat. Nowhere to keep a baby. In one generation, randomly, their DNA says, I'm going to start to grow a pouch. But evolution will tell you it takes hundreds of thousands and millions of years for these things to happen. So you have to wait for the mutation to kick in, but it doesn't grow a full pouch. It's just a tiny little flap of skin. Well, that flap of skin is not a beneficial trait. Why would it carry on a flap of skin? It's gone the next generation because it wasn't a beneficial trait. You either have the pouch or you don't. That's it.
Yeah, fair.
That's it. And if you don't have it, how do they carry their babies around? Because kangaroos don't have arms. Well, they got the little punching on. I'm sorry, they got a little punch on, but they can't like put them on the back like a gorilla. So
yeah.
We should really just watch videos of kangaroos punching people.
And I went to like one of our local zoos actually has some red kangaroos, and actually going to see those, like I never really thought about a kangaroo hopping really before. Like I knew they hopped and I knew it in my mind, but to actually see it, live or in person, it's like, wow, that's pretty amazing. They're not like, red kangaroos are smaller, so they're not like, the big boys that you see in videos down in Australia, with all the muscles and can, rip your hand off or arm out of the socket, type of thing. But so again, Brian, what is this? Yeah, I guess I'll pose it this way. What is the scariest thing that you think of today when you think of what teens or kids are being taught in schools?
As far as
good luck.
Right. I guess being taught in schools, I mean, it may not even be like, well, I guess we were talking about that before we recorded, so I was going to bring something else up, but it's what's being taught not in the classes, and the whole, you have to, going back to this, you have to gender somebody the right way. If you misgender them, you're going to get detention, or, almost forcing ideology on these kids. And then the kids come out of high school, and they have to, it's been forced down their throat where they have to believe in evolution. They're not being taught that God created this world. And then again, you have to be taught that they're being taught that you can be whatever gender you want. You can like whatever gender you want. Sure. Let's have this, you have a female that thinks she's a male and a male that thinks he's a female, and then they're dating, or it's chaos as far as what's being taught. And again, that's not necessarily being taught as a specific subject. It's just in general the idea that they're getting from school, and I just can't go along with all of this. And kids are confused. Birth rates are dropping. And go figure, birth rates are dropping because, how do you take let's say a male that thinks he should be a female and starts taking different hormone blockers and all this, and then messing with their genitalia and do the same thing as a female? Well, these kids are never going to have kids because they're ruining their bodies, and they cannot anymore, produce kids, even if they eventually go back to, and there's whole websites set up for this. I can't remember, Luke, you may be able to chime in with what this is, because we just listened to this talk from the guy that did the book, and his name is slipping my mind. I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. I think he talked about a website where
so Frank Turek is the author, and when someone detransitions.
Right. So it's when they're detransitioning and they go and want to discuss what it's like, what their whole process, what they went through. And these kids who have now, a lot of them are adults, and they're discussing it, and then they are just blasted for discussing what they went through, what they were forced to do, when they said, "Hey, I feel if I'm a boy, a male, I feel like maybe I should be a female." And sometimes they're just put into these programs that are that just force they can't turn out of it until they become an adult and they realize that was a mistake. They turn out of it and then they're just blasted. And I don't know. That's kind of a long answer, I guess. But so it may not be a subject in school, but just the ideas that they're getting in school is some of the stuff that worries me the most.
Sure. And Luke, same question.
So my immediate answer would have been the same. We can take a different path. But I don't want to let this one go. This is so big for parents. A lot of parents feel afraid that if they speak out, like Brian just did, or like I'm about to, if they speak out, oh, there are only two genders and that's it. You either are a boy or you are a girl. Anything. If they speak out like that, they're afraid they're going to be silenced. They're going to be called full of hate. You're a transphobe. You're a homophobe. You're an Islamophobe. You're a xenophobe. You're a racist. You're a sexist. Pick a thing, and you are now labeled. And most people are not prepared to deal with that. They don't know how to stand against that because their foundation is lacking. And because they don't want that confrontation, they stay silent and they leave the kids to figure it out. Any parent listening to this is a scary concept. If we can't tell our kids what right is and what wrong is and what truth is, where are the kids gonna get it from? I'm a public school teacher. I teach government and economics, 12th graders. I am well aware what this is like in the classroom. If parents are not teaching this, teachers are. So let's talk about what teachers are licensed to teach. Teachers are licensed to teach what they went to college for and what they took a licensure test on. But teachers are convincing America that they are somehow better prepared to teach kids about gender identity and sexual orientation than parents. Teachers didn't go to college to take classes and teach this. They went to college to teach mathematics, and that's what their licensure is. It's a house of lies. Teachers are not licensed to teach this stuff. They just want to. So they shame the parents, so the parents are quiet. And eventually your 12-year-old comes home and says, I want to be a different gender. Where'd you get that from? School. It is always the same answer. It doesn't change. Schools and TikTok and YouTube, and we are letting our kids grow up with teachers that are hiding preferred pronouns from parents. They're just hiding.
Sure.
Yeah, that's not.
It's in the school's policy now. Don't tell the parents. Why? Because they may be in danger at home. Where are we getting that from? So all of a sudden, we have educators all across America that somehow magically got licensed to teach gender identity, but they didn't take college classes on that. And if they did, they took one that they were forced to take. They're not licensed in that. And we have principals. By the way, I went through Indiana University, IU, got a master's in educational leadership so that I can be a principal. I went through the program. I can tell you exactly how politically biased these programs are. And this isn't Indiana. I went through the program. It's horrible. So it's pumping out principals that are going to go make more teachers and tell them. It's absolutely insane. And every day you turn on the news and there are 4 or 5 more stories about parents fighting back at board meetings being shut down, about parents reading books in the libraries, but the board members shut them down because these books are pornographic. In other words, we can put it in the library, but you can't read it out loud to adults. This is the world we live in.
Yeah.
So we homeschool.
Yeah. Totally different. I mean, and, I graduated 15 years ago. And it was like a totally different world, from when, I don't know if we were really worried about racism per se, or half of anything. I think maybe the biggest thing coming through high school was LGBTQ, rights. Probably would have been the biggest social issue that I would have had to deal with in school.
So yes and no. So you're an 08 graduate?
I am.
Yeah, so I recall the Army had me recruiting in Minnesota during that time. When I was so my Army was 20 years active duty. So I remember going to University of Minnesota campuses. Now, Minnesota is the only state out of 50 that did not vote to reelect Ronald Reagan. This is not a push for conservative or liberal views. It's just stating where Minnesota stands. And so we go to the college campuses, and they would have the rainbow flags flying, but the rainbow flag didn't stand for LGBTQ plus IA. It stood for LGB.
Mm-hmm.
Because in 2008, trans and queer were known as incredibly weird, incredibly strange. People don't do these things. They just don't. Even the LGB community was not associated with them. They weren't. Politically, they pulled them in. And so imagine you are someone that is lesbian and you are now lumped in with somebody. I think about this often when I hear it. You are now lumped in with somebody that wants to mutilate their genitalia. How do people not think about this? BIPOC, right? People of color. They now have they're talking about black queers. Now they're getting lumped in just because they have a smaller amount of people. So they're minorities. It's amazing. But in Minnesota, 2008, the biggest thing out there was we're in Iraq and we're in Afghanistan and LGBT.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the big things. The military, George Bush, and then the housing bubble. This LGBTQ stuff, it wasn't there.
Yeah.
You know, people were left alone to go do your things. It wasn't pushed.
Absolutely. And then especially like now today, and you mentioned everything being lumped into one thing. Just then the fact that, you know, if someone I heard a story of, you know, a trans Republican or I guess trans Republican. Now I'd actually have to look it up, but anyways, they were pretty much rejected by the LGBTQ plus community because their views. Well, you're right, Republican, and you know the stories of I watched the infamous Dave Chappelle special just to see what that was about, and the story in there of this trans person that ended up taking their own life at the end because they were bullied by members of that community. You know, it wasn't, it wasn't a straight Christian community that bullied this person. It wasn't Westboro Baptist or other extremist, type groups, I would say. It was the trans community bullied this person. And I find it really heartbreaking and sad that you're going, people who go through this can't even find acceptance in something that they're supposed to be a part of. Yeah.
Group.
So if you take it a step further, man, this week, our newsletter, we're talking about electronics, not social media. Maybe, Brian, we could have been more narrow, maybe sometime in the future. But just electronics. So imagine you got a 13, 14, 15-year-old daughter and you don't monitor screen time. You don't monitor what's on the phone, and they're going to public school. What do we think they're doing on their phone? Mm-hmm. Homework? They're not doing homework. And so they are filled with junk. They are filled with garbage. And you mentioned acceptance. And so it's borderline. It's a cultural fad that's sweeping across America to state that you're a different gender. And when schools push, you have to accept this. Well, Brian and I were talking about this the other day. Accept means to state that something is okay. Somebody could look at Webster's dictionary. I accept that answer. That means I acknowledge that that is okay. So when people say, oh, no, you need to have acceptance, what that means by definition, you need to say that this thing is okay. I inherently disagree. I think that the Jesus from our Bible, again and again and again, took a stance on right and wrong. I'm not declaring that Jesus would say that transgender stuff is wrong. We can have that conversation. I'm merely stating Jesus took a stance again and again and again on right and wrong. And he didn't hold back, and he was very direct. And almost every single time it happened when somebody would come up and start a conversation with him. He wouldn't just walk around just pointing fingers. It would involve an interaction. So as parents, are we willing to take a stance and say, this is right and this is wrong? We do it in everything else in life. Don't do drugs. Don't do cocaine when you're 14. Why not? Because the law says it's wrong? Is that because no, because you know that it's wrong. Don't go get a beer at 12, honey. Why not, Dad? Well, because the law says you have to be 21. No, you know that it's a wrong thing for your 12-year-old to do. Morally, inside, we know these things are wrong. Don't we teach our little ones? And you will too, Jared, when you have kids. We'll have to talk again. Yeah, you have a kid. Your kid is 2, and your kid lies. We have to teach our kids not to lie. We teach them right and wrong all the time. And yet modern day parents are afraid because they'll be silenced and told that they're full of hate. So they don't take a stance on this. So they let their teenagers with phones, with social media, and the public school find it out on their own. But we cannot be lost or confused or frustrated when they leave the house and they have turned away from the church. They have turned away from God. They have turned away from your faith. So we're trying to help people, help parents take a stance, trying to help them win back some of that ground.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Well said, Brian.
I helped out a lot there.
Yeah. Well, and Luke, too, you being a high school teacher, I kind of wanted to circle back to this a little bit. Does the students that you have taught now or in the past, do they really understand labels like, you know, transphobe, homophobe, racist, anything that could, I guess, be labeled today, you know, negatively, positively? Do they really understand what they're saying when they, you know, put labels out there, I guess is my question.
Yeah, so I definitely have some experience with the racist piece. Not that I was declared racist. Call me whatever you want. But when I was teaching in the city itself, I currently teach an online high school. Politics. I just walked away from one of my last schools. So when I was teaching, I would teach 6 periods, and out of the 130 kids I'd see, I think 4 or 5 would be white. Right? Teaching inside Indianapolis. I don't care. Never did care. And it's funny, most kids don't care. So we would talk about the word racist. And I'd look at the class and be me and 25 kids, and they're all black or Hispanic in many of those classes, right? That's a little ask question. If you told me that I'm racist, how could I defend that? And I just let the silence linger. How could I defend it? Well, you couldn't, Mr. Grimm. So is it fair to call somebody racist? Well, I mean, if they did something racist, but you just said I could never defend it. There's no way to defend that I'm racist, no matter what I do. No matter how far I go in my past and try to say I'm not racist, because no matter what I list, I could have decades of doing great work, working with the people you say I'm racist against, whatever group that is. I could say I've been working with them for decades, bring them into my house. I could have adopted 6 kids of whatever race you think I'm racist against. Nothing would be good enough, because once you have made up your mind, you've made up your mind. It is an unfair claim. And if I said that you're racist, you would say, nah, Mr. Grimm, that's dumb, because you know that it is. So we put a big pause on, at least for them. I'm just trying to check them so that when they graduate, they can slow down with all these accusations and being so divisive in America. But I left that school in 2021, and the new thing is now the transgender issue, you know, calling someone a transphobe. Well, that conversation wasn't there 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Our landscape has changed, man.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's shocking to me how time flies, you know, because it was, you know, for me, it seems like I blinked and it was 2016, you know, and now, you know, all the stuff that's happened from 2016 to, you know, now, it's just crazy how fast, like, it seemed, those times seem so long ago, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Brian shared a video with us, a movie with us recently that we watched, talking about dividing people. Brian, the social dilemma. Are you able to recount how those people explain how it divides people? Put you on the spot there.
You are. I don't know. I saw it probably 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and I get the basic idea, and we do plan on watching it with our kids soon. But we've been what he's referring to here is that this last lesson we talked about being addicted to technology and being on our phones way too much, and in there we talk about just briefly about the being on social networks, being on Facebook and Twitter and all of that. But the resource we put in the newsletter was the documentary there, The Social Dilemma. And I probably watched it 2 years ago. Don't fully remember it. I do want to do again, like I said, sit down with the kids and watch it. But it's as far as how it breaks us apart, how it divides us. I don't remember for sure. I do know just the other day I got on, which I've now deleted Facebook from my phone, which is the only thing I had on it. It's not even there anymore. So, but I do remember just the other day I got on and saw something. I think it was just a suggestion. Two things really, but one was a suggested group, and I don't know if it caught my cookies or whatever from our Bible study here that we're doing in our small group is about that book. And I say Bible study, it's obviously a different book, but that I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. And Monday, maybe I'm on Facebook scrolling through and I see this group, and it's all about the opposite side and just talking about how crazy people are to think that our world could be created by somebody. And so again, very divisive. There's people in the group arguing. 90% of it was on the opposite side of my view. And then the same night, I think I saw something that was about Indians and how we stole all of our land from the Indians and we should give it all back. And of course, that's super divisive because there's people saying that, again, on the side of we stole all of our land, let's give it back. And people on the other side arguing, saying, well, then give your land back. Give your house to the closest reservation. Give your house to an Indian. And we're talking Native Americans here. And just looking at it, seeing it so divisive. And finally, I read a comment, which that's what I do. I end up reading most of the comments.
Same
just
here.
Yeah. And one of the comments was about, I think it was just like, guys, most of these divisive comments probably start with bots. And that's true. I think something we learned from Elon Musk buying Twitter is the amount of bots and fake accounts that are posting. And they post a divisive comment to get the arguing started. So even if the rest of the comments are not the bots, that starts a lot of times with bots. And I think that's a big part of being divisive is it's not even humans. It's not us three arguing on Facebook. It's some bot that starts it. And then it's like, oh, I do have a different view than you on this, and I'm going to sit here and argue about it. So I got tired of it. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I felt watch. Yeah, I completely have felt the same way as both of you towards Facebook, towards election. Ironically enough, the 2015, 2016, elections, stuff like that. And really it has taught me a lot because I guess I'm kind of level-headed on my thought process, how I critically think and everything. And for me personally, excuse me. Sorry about that. Something got caught in my throat as I was talking. For me personally, like, learning how people interact with each other, how other Christians interact with each other, whether it be, you know, this Christian band did this or said this, and how could they really call themselves a Christian band if they're doing this, and all different types of the ideologies, you know, kind of clash, you know, on Facebook, or even like, you know, I thought this person was a Christian, but how can they really think this way, or, you know, call someone a bigot because of what they did, you know, here. And I think social media, now looking back on it, especially with our conversation, how social media can kind of develop and warp, you know, that mindset, or be a teaching tool for someone who, you know, can actually think through it. So with that being said, how much, Brian, how much do you think, how important it is to, I guess, teach or come across or talk about critical thinking with parents or other teens?
Sure.
You know.
I mean, critical thinking is incredibly important. And I know Luke does this as well, and I do with my kids, but we will just ask the kids what they think about something. And that's one of my big arguments with school is I think schools teach kids what to think and not necessarily how to think. So we don't necessarily tell our kids that's wrong, or, you know, you need to do this in this situation. We will ask them their opinion. And of course, you know, we can correct and say, well, okay, you got this part right, but maybe this part needs to be a little different. So we're not going to just sit there and say that was dumb, don't do that again, and not give any explanation on why. I like to sit the kids down and say, what did you think about this, so they can start that process of thinking. Again, not just telling them this is what you got to do, but get them thinking. So critical thinking is incredibly important, and I think not enough kids are doing it now. Not enough parents can even do that. I have conversations with adults all the time where I decide to just back off because there's no thinking involved in what's going on. They're just saying what the news what the news had said. In fact, one quick example, when the whole and I'm not going to get into all the details, but when the whole Ukraine-Russia thing kicked off, I remember having a conversation with some family members, and without even saying what my opinion is on the whole thing, they came in with only some comments, and I could tell what they were saying. I've heard it 20 times on the news. Their only comments were exactly, almost word for word, what I had heard, what the news was saying, and I decided to not even continue the conversation. I said, because I was telling my wife later, I said, there's no thinking going on in this conversation. And again, this isn't putting out my view on anything that happened there, but there was no thinking of what's going on. There was just what the news told them on one specific thing was what they're regurgitating. And when I tried to say, well, think about it this way, nope, there was nothing. It was, well, the news said I should think this way. And when we get watching the news, and unfortunately, you can tell how many people just sit there and watch the news, and now you can tell which news they're watching. Too many times I can sit there and have a conversation, say, well, you watched, I could tell that you sat there and probably watched Fox News for the last week, 2 hours every evening, or you sat there and watched CNN, and you're not giving me any real conversation. You're just repeating what they said. So again, going back to that, it's incredibly important to teach that critical thinking, because not enough kids, not enough adults are doing that now.
Yeah, that dreaded echo chamber, and it's scary, you know, just, you know, having it, looking at different media outlets all across the board, and having, like, you know, hearing the same talking point over and over again, and not everyone having any like new material in front of them.
Yeah, and really with I'll bring it back to the website, not to keep plugging this, but these16things.com. Our goal is to put some of this information out so parents can understand what to even talk about. Imagine, you're sitting down with kids, which I know you don't have kids yet, but the listeners here, sitting down with your kids at the dining room table, and we get home from work, we're tired, we don't, maybe we just want to get the kids, get them fed, get them up to their room. Hey, go watch TV, go do something in your own room. And I want to just veg out and say, I've had a tough day at work. I just want to relax and have a peaceful couple hours till the kids get in bed, and move on with my life. But we want to get some of this information in front of the parents. So they can be the experts in their kids' eyes. And so they can have that idea of what should I even talk about at the dining room table? Because we're losing touch with kids too often, and we don't even know what to talk about. Or if we do talk, it's, may say, how was your day? Oh, good. What'd you learn in school? I learned this, learned that. And then it's on to sports. You guys see the Pacers game? You guys see the Colts game? Anything like that. And there's no real meat of the conversation. So we want to put that in front of the parents to say, hey, maybe talk about this week. And parents can learn from this too. But in this, we're not saying that even Luke and I are the experts. We do these lessons.
Maybe you.
Right. We were having the conversation the other day with, like we had said earlier, with our youth pastor and his wife. And she had said, how can we help our kids understand that we do know what they're going through. We can be the experts, or we do know a lot about some of these subjects that maybe they think we don't know about because we're old, we're out of date. We don't know what they're going through now. And I think my comment was, the way I teach my kids that I'm the expert, I just tell them, even if I tell them 10 times, I'm the expert at this. I know what I'm doing. I'm the best. And obviously that was a joke, better in context at that time and versus now. But again, our goal is to get this information to the parents, say, maybe discuss this week. And these are some points that we have to discuss. But again, we're doing these right alongside with our kids. Every single lesson I've at least discussed with my kids. I haven't got to this week because we've been busy every evening, which is not a normal thing for us. But we will get to these lessons with our kids for this week as well. And yeah, so that's the goal of the website, is just helping parents sit down with their kids.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd have to look it up. I'd have to look it up, but Pastor Levi Lusko was actually talking about some of what you're referring to in one of his last sermon series I listened to. And he'll dive in, and he'll give stats, kind of, or cool fun facts about, one of them was family and family time, and how much of a difference it makes for kids to, sit down at a table and, have a conversation with their parents. Or another cool one that I like, you guys reminded me of a little bit a while ago, was talking about depression in girls, and especially teen girls. And it all started, this depression spike started in about 2013, and he cited two things that happened that I think kind of contributed to this. Was number one, Instagram, Facebook was
social media.
Facebook bought Instagram, and number two was that's also around the same time Apple put that front camera, on your phone, and just the whole value system everything like that. And he does. Levi and Jenny, Fresh Life Church, they do a really good job at these family series, and I think they're doing Marriage right now. But it's been a blessing for me personally to listen and learn from them, and I prepare me for today. But so last couple questions I wanted to talk about the entertainment industry. How do you deal with that for each of your kids? How do you decide? And I wanted to hit on too, because I feel like this is a less talked about topic, is especially video games with kids. And I don't know how aware you two are with the gaming culture it is today, but it is what I would call a toxic dump heap of and just like, whether it's Call of Duty or Counter-Strike or some of the big multiplayer games out there. I mean, it's it can get pretty vulgar for kids, and just hearing kids talk like a sailor, to put it so frank.
So I consider that our kids, we have a Switch upstairs and we have a Xbox downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Xbox, I enjoy turning on a game once in a while as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we got the Hogwarts Legacy recently. Our two oldest kind of take turns,
Mm-hmm.
but for 45 minutes probably every second day. So upstairs on the Switch, we have Minecraft, but they're not talking to anybody. There's no headset.
Right.
And they got some Mario games. It's basically all Mario themed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for a parent to allow their kid onto Fortnite with the headset, on a Call of Duty with the headset, on any of those with the headset, it's social media just with the video game.
Sure.
It's the same thing as allowing your kid to go spend 3 hours up in their bedroom as a 14-year-old on TikTok or on Twitter. It's the same thing. There's no true regulation. They pick things up. They pick up bad habits. They do the bad habits. And if it's just a game. Well, if it's just a game, get them off the multiplayer. I'm not against multiplayer. I'm not. I promise you, I'm not. I actually enjoy jumping in the mix. But I'm also not a 13 or 14-year-old with a mushy brain that's picking up all these habits. When I was 13 or 14, I would have picked up all those bad habits. I would have started cussing like a sailor. I think a parent needs to take a stance. I will not allow my kids to jump in that mix. I just won't. And it's okay. It's okay for a parent to say no. But my friends are doing it. Don't care. I truly don't care. Your parents aren't charged. They're not biblically charged to raise you. I am biblically charged to raise you. So I'm all in for games. Like I'm going through the Arkham Knight trilogy again downstairs. I'm all in for games. I'm not against games.
Right.
They just need to get monitored like everything else. Everything in moderation.
Yeah, as far as us, none of our kids are on any social media at all. And to be honest, they haven't even asked. They have never come to me and said, Dad, can I set up a Facebook account? Can I get on TikTok? Nothing. So we're not just being mean parents saying you can't do it, although I wouldn't have an issue doing that. So they're not on any social media. As far as games at our house, our kids, the boys have a Switch, and they are limited. In fact, I think because of falling behind on some schoolwork, I think one of them hasn't been on it for a few weeks. The other one has had very little time on it, and it might not have even been behind on schoolwork. Maybe they played when they weren't supposed to. And when I say played when they weren't supposed to, they probably had didn't set their 30-minute time limit and played for an hour, so it got taken away. Maybe they did it a couple times. So not really on games. They do have, in fact, I'm on a headset for their Switch, and so they can, when they get on it, play with their friends, but they're playing with only approved friends. So they're not playing with anybody they can come across. We know who they're talking to, and we do monitor that to a bit. And then movies and what they watch on TV, everything is approved for the most part. Occasionally they'll find something and maybe we do a little bit of research and find out what the show is about, or my wife will watch it with them the first time. So let's watch several episodes, see how it goes. If in fact, as I know how TV is, they'll get you in the first 5-6 episodes maybe, and there's nothing wrong with it. And once you're hooked, then they start introducing the trans characters, the fact that this boy has a boyfriend, and they'll do that. So we do maybe monitor the first several episodes and say, if there's anything, let's discuss it. And they know now to, hey, we turned this off because this was going on, or Mom and Dad, we saw this in it. What do you guys think? So we monitor it pretty well.
Oh, that's actually pretty cool.
Jared, have you seen the last Doctor Strange movie? The multiverse?
Oh, yeah, I went. Yes, I believe I went. Yeah, I saw that in theaters.
So America Chavez, the teenage girl that's like at the center of the story, do you remember her?
Yes.
Do you remember what pin she had on her jean jacket throughout the entire movie?
I believe it was a Captain America pin, a star.
It was the trans flag.
Trans flag? Okay.
Yep.
I guess I don't.
Movie.
I remember a pin.
So I was at Target recently, and you know those Funko Pop, the little bobbleheads.
Yeah.
But they're not. They're just.
I have way too many, but okay.
I have maybe 7 or 8, and they had some from the Multiverse of Madness, and there she is. And I'm like, let me just see, and I look in, and Funko went out of the way to make sure that if you buy that character, it has the trans flag pin on her jean jacket. So we are now at a crossroads for parents. You know, I'm not saying you got to go or you don't go buy this thing. That's not my point. My point is,
right,
it is everywhere, everywhere, and parents cannot just sit back and not take some sort of a stance.
Yeah,
and last thing there is, if you choose to take a stance, what is that stance grounded on? Is it grounded on what culture says is truth? Because that's garbage. Or is it grounded on what Jesus says is truth? Where do we take our stance from? And if you don't take a stance, you're hoping your parents get it from culture. Good luck. So, I know we brought it up at the beginning. Please go check out our stuff. We got this newsletter twice a week. We're here to help. We're here to just give ideas to sit down at the dining room table. Like Ryan said.
Yeah, and it isn't all. I was gonna say real quickly, it isn't all cookie cutter. You know, I grew up. I think for me, you know, TV growing up, I mean, my mom did monitor, my dad did monitor, you know, the things we watch, and, you know, it's pretty much, you know, no to the, let's say, the Simpsons, you know, stuff like that, vice versa. So it really wasn't, obviously, the multiplayer things, but just, also, too, I gotta admit, I would be the bad kid. You know, if they said no to something, I would find some way to, you know, sneak it or watch it or anything like that. But well, that brings me up real quick. I remember when Black Hawk Down and Saving Private Ryan were coming out, I was way too young, and I had to wait, you know, 5 or 6 years. But, you know, I remember when we first got it on paper, whatever, I'd have to have Dad screen it, you know, and then hope that it would come back where I could watch it and stuff like that. But to the point, not every family, even Christian families, are all cookie cutter. You know, there are, you know, some things, and I'm sure with you guys, that you let your kids do that the other doesn't, you know, and that's the way I grew up. I had friends, for example, family that went to our church, you know, they were allowed to read Harry Potter when it first came out, where our parents didn't, you know, allow that for us until we got a little bit older, you know, and stuff like that. So.
Harry Potter. So it's really fascinating. Harry Potter and Jesus. Have you ever noticed how much they actually have in common?
Yes. I've noticed the allegories there. For me personally, I'm a big Tolkien fan and Lewis fan. So, and I've been, it isn't my first time in the fantasy realm.
Yeah, so Harry Potter, a lot of parents were against it because it's magic, right? It's wizardry.
Yeah.
The Bible's pretty clear about, don't go down this path. But J.K. Rowling even compared Dumbledore to John the Baptist. Her own words is that Dumbledore saw the prophecy, said, this is the one, these are the signs, you are the one that will save. And he understood there must be death and then resurrection. This is J.K. Rowling speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's recorded. It's really, really kind of fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So tell us again, guys, there are like, we could go on for another 7 hours, I think, great conversation all around. And I definitely would love to have you back on in the future to talk more about these things. But tell us again about your website, where people can go.
Sure. So these 16 things, which with a 1 and a 6, these 16things.com, pretty simple. We're not asking you to buy anything. We're not asking really anything, but sign up for your email address and we will give you the emails. We'll send them to your inbox to have that maybe 5 to 10 minute discussion. And there are things like we mentioned, watching the documentary, that yes, that's not a 5 to 10 minute documentary, but the discussion part can be that just while you're sitting at the dinner table. Or sometimes we'll be cooking a meal and teach kids how to cook a meal, because we didn't get into this side of it, but we want to teach some of the hard skills as well. How to cook a meal, how to do how to defend yourself, how to work on your finances. So all those types of lessons will be involved, but go to the website, sign up for the newsletter, get the emails, and just read them and think about these things with your kids.
Yeah.
Anything else, Luke?
No, I mean, there's no cost. We don't know what the future looks like, but right now, no matter what, anybody can sign up and get the two newsletters, and that is the meat and potatoes of what we do. Outreach, got some videos to kind of, like the one we pushed out yesterday, trying to show what it looks like for electronics to walk into a room of a whole bunch of 8th and 9th graders. Their heads are just buried in their phones, buried in their tablets, buried on the Switch. Think about being at a grocery store and a parent is pushing a cart and 2 kids sitting in there, 3-year-olds buried in the cell phone. Going to the restaurant, you see a family, mom and dad look irritated as can be, but they give a tablet to their 3-year-old. The 17-year-olds got their earbuds in to listen to music, and the teenagers, surfing YouTube. There's no communication, there's no conversation, and the parents feel like they've lost the battle. They don't know how to regain control. And so that's what this week is about. these16things.com. Sign up for the newsletter. Jesus will love you more. That is not true. We would just love you guys to sign up, and we just want to reach people and help people.
Yeah. So last thing before I let you guys go and everything, one question I've been meaning to ask is, what is the most common thing that parents come to you and ask about advice or to give?
I would say for the website here, in terms of that, is the culture. How do we deal with the culture of saying the kids have to put up with, like we mentioned earlier, have to make sure they use the right pronouns, and how do we get around that? How do we navigate that conversation with our kids? And I would say that's the most common thing people want to talk about.
Yeah, and I don't know how to fix fill in the blank issue. I don't know how to fix the cell phone issue. I don't know how to fix the social media issue. I don't know how to fix the music they're listening to. I don't know how to fix my overweight kid. I just don't know how to get them to understand how fitness is important. I think I froze there. I don't know how to fix teaching them how important fitness is. I don't know how to fix it that they just blow all their money. I don't know how to fix whatever the issue happens to be. And the parent doesn't need to be a marathon runner to talk about fitness. We're not asking the kids to be marathon runners. We just want them to understand, hey, as you come out of the house, just understand a fitness lifestyle. That's all. As you come out of the house, understand the importance of cooking meals. You won't eat out 2 times a day. When they leave the house, when they leave the house, they know how to. And when they're 22 years old, they are still calling home to say hi. They still want to come home for Thanksgiving. They want to come home for Christmas. They want you to be there when their kid is born. They want advice. Well, that end state, that end goal, it's not free, and it does not come easy. And so we understand you have to be intentional. So a lot of parents don't know how to do it. So we're trying to help them be intentional.
And I gotta add to that the whole, moving out, getting on their own. About 2 weeks from now, I've been somewhat out on my own for 10 years, married for 10 years. And with that being said, toilet paper, like, I know it's the weirdest thing to say, but like, I made sure we had dishes, silverware. I knew we needed to buy food, and, we had our own clothes, bedding, stuff like that. And it wasn't until, cleaning supplies, like I got the cleaning supplies and everything. But then I realized we needed to buy toilet paper, and so it's just that small stuff that I think kids starting out on their own, don't realize, or they begin to realize how much, mom or dad provided for them.
Yeah. So we can say that toilet paper it's clearly important, but we can say that's small beans, right? You move into a new place, right. You're 20. Okay. Oh man, we left Walmart. We bought everything but toilet paper. Okay. That's a lesson learned you won't make again, but there are a lot of things that are bigger than that. And we can't wait for our kids to make these mistakes.
Right.
I don't want to. Some things we can actually teach them instead of waiting for them to make a mistake. Oh, Dad, I got fired. Why'd you get fired? Because I showed up late. Why'd you show up late? Because in high school, teachers didn't care if I missed class. Teachers didn't care if I was late. They said, thanks for joining us. No, man, we got to teach hard work ethic. So why wait until a kid is fired to teach them that? Instead of reacting, let's intentionally sit them down and explain why these things matter.
And I'll absolutely say, no, you're fine. The last thing, at least on my mind, is, you're absolutely right. And, as your kids get older, and I hope they learn the same thing I did, is, listen to dad, listen to mom, because, things will happen in life where, like, there's several things my dad has told me, and I'm like, what does dad know? What does dad know about being a teenager? What does mom know about being a teenager? And it was almost like they were prophets, and, things that they told me, would happen, or, that I should do more of, or I didn't listen to, and it burns me in the end. I'm like, oh, okay now, so. Yeah.
So looking back, our parents are pretty smart, but when we're teenagers, we're like, oh, they're dumb. They don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, and I guess that's where critical thinking, we don't have that as teenagers, because it's just like, we never thought of the world before us. We never thought our parents were ever teenagers, we just think everything's old. I remember when my uncle turned 30, and I thought that was old, and now I'm almost halfway through my 30s, and I'm like, oh, okay, type of thing. But so
good.
These16things.com, and I encourage everyone to go out there. I don't think we said it enough. These16things.com with actual numerical 16. I'll throw down the screen.
I said we go in a circle. Let's go in a circle and let's each say 5 times.
It'll probably be in the plug like 4 times, right?
Jared, we really do appreciate you having us on, man.
Yeah, you guys are welcome, anytime, annually, monthly, quarterly. I don't know.
Daily, dude. I'll see you tomorrow 9 o'clock. Let's go. So yeah, for real, if there's ever a topic you got in your mind, just reach out to either one of us an email and say, hey, you guys comfortable talking about this thing for an hour? We probably are. We can even add in some humor. Brian knows tons of dad jokes.
And I got the cup.
It's a dad joke though.
When it's apparent.
Good.
I gotta send you my mug. Then I have a mug that I got from my dad and I bought for me last Father's Day. It was asking me about my dad jokes. You know, I got plenty. I got plenty to share. Unfortunately, though, we're out of time for today. So till next time, I'm Jared from Steel and Junior Podcast, and I will catch you all later.
Hey guys, it's me. One more time, I just wanted to say what a pleasure it was to have Luke and Brian on my show. Again, if you want to check out anything Steel and June, you can go to the website, steelandjune.com. You can go to Linktree. That's where you'll find all my social media links, links to other episodes, other podcasts, which you could also find on the website as well. It was, again, a great honor to have you guys, and I hope to have another conversation real soon. God bless.
You have been listening to Stealing June, a podcast. Stealing June is a ceramic production. Not all views or opinions expressed in today's episode necessarily reflect that of the host or staff members of Ceramic Productions. All rights reserved. Copyright 2023.